Now we're moving on to the final speaker of today, Ali Shapouran. Ali Shapouran is a medical doctor and worked as a teacher of Persian literature in Iran for 15 years before starting his master's studies at St. Andrews University in 2021. His main research subjects are the scribal culture and textual history of the Shahnameh and the history of the Persian language between the 13th and 15th centuries. He has written several articles in Persian and most recently worked as the editor for the special issue of Gozarish Miras on the history of the Persian language and culture in Azerbaijan, the Caucasus, and the Anatolia. I pass on to Ali, who is going to talk about the text Modern Illuminations. The title of his paper is The Preparation of New Text Editions in Baysunghur's Library. Ali, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you for your introduction. Hello, everyone, and congratulations to you for the great symposium. Let's see if I can share my screen with you. In this presentation, I will try to scratch the surface of what Randall MacLeod once regarded as transformation, transforming the text while transmitting it in the Prince Baysunghur's library, of course. His manuscripts are beautiful, but the text is always important, and since it contains a large body of information, it should be investigated carefully. So let's see if I can switch between my slides. The first question is, was the text the main goal or even a main goal of producing books in Baysunghur's atelier? A main goal, of course, yes. The list of books produced for him shows he had certain inclinations. He loved history, wisdom or hikmat, and the great poets of the 14th century like Haju, Hafez, and Emad Faqih, and Obaid, the epic poetry. However, by no means the textual characteristics could be assumed the main goal for Baysunghur's library, because we can find some testimonial for that verdict from the Arzedasht, for example, which I'm sure Shiva has more to say than me about it. I just want to draw your attention to one sentence in Arzedasht, which tells کتابخانه که جهت نقاشان بنیاد نهاده تکمیل یافته نقاشان و کاتبان نزول کرده. The library founded for the painters has been completed and the painters and scribes settled down. That sentence shows that the library was essentially made for the painters, and the scribes could be regarded kind of subsidiary, in fact. And of course, elaborate aesthetics could be shown in other ways too, because other information shows that the tendency towards elaborate and delicate calligraphy was growing over the generations, even before Baysunghur's era. Thaxton cites a manuscript in Topkapı Sarayı Museum declaring a daily duty for scribes to transcribe 80 lines or couplets of Masnavis and 50 couplets of ghazals. And I should say that I use the word couplet for bait and verse for misra. So couplets are lines and half of them are verses. Shiva in her dissertation has calculated even a lesser number in practice, 60 for Ja'far and 65 for Muhammad bin Mutahhab. So if we turn to Blair's calculation after Timurid's, the numbers seem to shrink even more, down to 20 to 30 lines a day in Tahmasp's Shahnameh. But how about before then? We have some evidence. One of Shahnameh scribes is Mas'ud Mutatabbib. He wrote a manuscript of Hadiqatul Haqiqat and Tuhfatul Iraqain in 791. or 1388 in Common Era dates. However, since he gives only a month in his colophons, the writing period could have taken, in fact, 31 to 88 days, which means approximately 30 to 90 couplets a day. So it doesn't give us a clear information. Bernard O'Kane, based on a Khamsa manuscript, pairs 36 on John Ryland's library, I believe, calculated 103 to 188 couplets a day. And based on that, he assumed the Cairo manuscripts of 796 or 1394. Scribe had written 200 couplets a day in Muzaffarid period, or a bit after Muzaffarid rulers' demise. And we can add some Injuid data to those. We have a very famous manuscript of the Shahnameh, St. Petersburg, Dorn 329, dated 1333, from whom I believe Adamova asseverated we have no other extant manuscripts. However, they scribed of a very important copy of a dictionary, Lughat Fors, which is in fact the first Persian dictionary, was the same scribe. Horn's edition of the book was mainly based on the manuscript, which is kept in Vatican with the number Persiano 22. Calculating his rate, we reach almost 170 couplets per day. Based on the couplets in dropped pages, we reach a number between 165 and 174 couplets a day for Abdurrahman ibn Hassan ibn Ahmad ibn Abdurrahman ibn Zahir, which was the scribe for both Lughat Fors and the Shahnameh. The first one was written in Muharram 9th of 733, and the Shahnameh in last day of Jumad al-Awwal the same year. So in Injuid days and Muzaffarid days, we seem to have more numbers of couplets written, and then when we approach towards Timurids, it declines, and then even lesser in later periods in Safavid periods. So we seem to have some nuances and some changes in those respects. But with that approaches, what did they exactly do? The prose preface of the Baysunghur Shahnameh affirms that they had numerous copies. It says شاهنامه‌های متعدد در کتبخانه همایون بود، اما چنان که مزاج نازک و طبع لطیف شاه و شاهزاده آن را پسندیدی نبود، بشارت همایون نافذ گشت که از چند کتاب یکی را تصحیح ساخته مکمل گرداند. They had numerous copies of the Shahnameh, but neither was good enough for the elaborate tastes and delicate temperaments of the king and the prince. Therefore, the royal decree was released to correct and complete one of the several books. Was the royal decree from Shahrukh or Baysunghur? Although the words might suggest the first, we will see that the outcome is nearer to the prince's taste, not the king's. And on interpreting the word as نسخه های متعدد یکی را تصحیح ساخته, I believe the word as seems to mean from or amongst, not by or with. So it seems to be a decree to keep one of those manuscripts and try to make it more complete or more correct, in fact. But let's see practically what happened. And that's where I should discuss the term tashih a bit to show its background and meaning. In fact, the word itself means correction and not addition. So there's a difference between the word's original meaning and its English today's equivalent. The word could be found in different texts in Arabic religious traditions, but in Persian poetry, at least from the mid-13th century, it has been mentioned 2 times by Rumi, Maulana. من مصحف باطلم ولیکن تصحیح شوم چو تو بخوانی, which means I'm in an invalid Quran manuscript. However, I will be corrected if you read me. And قلم آنجا نهد دستش که کم بیند در او حرفی, چرا از عشق تصحیحش تو حرفی کم نمیگردی, which means he will pick a pen in his hand whenever he sees a letter is missing. Why? Because of the affection to his correction. You don't lose a letter, which means you don't change even a very little. And 2 verses show exactly how tasheeh took place while reading with a pen in hand. And one should consider that mindset when trying to understand and contextualize efforts of medieval literary scholars, in fact. And that's exactly the main jobs done by the first scribes / editors of the Shahnameh, which were, in fact, the first audience of their own transcription. In the 14th century, we know at least 2 cases of editions of the Shahnameh, which we can identify the partial or main exemplars with good approximation. The first one is, of course, Hamdullah Mustawfi, which I have demonstrated that he had several exemplars, but he used 1 for each part of the text. Of course, he claims to have around 50 manuscripts of the epic, but at least in a single part of the second half of the Shahnameh, more than 8,000 couplets of his transcription are almost identical with a manuscript kept in Karachi. And the second one was Mas'ud Mutatabbib, the second editor whose exemplar could be defined almost exactly. He had only 1 exemplar, which was also the St. Petersburg's Dorn 329's exemplar, but he corrected it in numerous cases without using anything but his own chimerical literary impression. I'm trying to reconstruct that archetype right now, in fact. But was it the case in Baysunghur's Shahnameh? And of course, that manuscript is Mas'ud Mutatabbib's transcription in Topkapi Saray, age 1511, or Khazine 1511, dated 772 or 1371. Was it the case in Baysunghur's Shahnameh too? Based on our current knowledge, absolutely not. But how we can interpret that and find that by comparing, of course, the texts with extant manuscripts of the epic. And this could be a bit or very boring, but let me introduce the dated manuscripts prior to Baysunghur's Shahnameh, which survived the dates. We have 14 dated manuscripts written prior to Baysunghur's Shahnameh, which could be divided into 2 main genealogical branches highlighted with blue and red, or colored with blue and red here. And those 2 green ones are a sub-branch of the red branch, which almost exclusively contains the manuscripts produced in Shiraz. And the blue branch seems to belong to northwestern areas of Greater Iran, again, almost exclusively. And we have some undated manuscripts prior to Baysunghur's Shahnameh, 4 of which are the so-called small Shahnamehs. 1 other is completely lost, at least from the textual viewpoint, the dispersed Great Jalayirid manuscript, as Bernard O'Kane calls it, and the lost Mustawfi's original manuscript, from which fortunately we have a copy, and the dispersed or butchered Ilkhanid manuscript. So from those 9 manuscripts, only manuscript of Beirut survived almost intact and complete. And those orange manuscripts are those that I cannot say that they belong to which branch or sub-branch of the text. Second, the small Shahnameh, and of course, the Jaloyi manuscript. And when you compare the text, these are the results of the first 100 couplets I could access and / or read in all manuscripts. The couplets cannot be found in succession in the Shahnameh, since I do not have complete access to some of the manuscripts, but and of course others like the Kama manuscript seem to be inaccessible, and I only had poor quality microfilms of them. Nevertheless, the conclusion is that the Baysunghuri Shahnameh is an eclectic edition. It was not based on a single manuscript. It's a combination, in fact, which resembles the Qavam manuscript, famous as Qavam ad-Din Hasan Wazir. Of course, in the date that manuscript was transcribed, it was not a Wazir, so I call it Haji Qavam or Qavam. Baysunghuri manuscript resembles the Qavam manuscript a lot, almost up to 75%, but 1/4 difference is a big difference compared to, say, Mutatabbet's edition. If you see those green manuscripts, they had only 5 differences in those 200 verses with St. Petersburg manuscript. And the Cairo II manuscript, 796, which has only 11 differences with the Metropolitan Small Shahnameh, which presumably was its pattern manuscript. It also seemed that those people in Baysunghur's library did not have the blue branch of the manuscripts at all, which you can see the statistics of them in the right column. Maybe and only maybe another relative manuscripts of them were in their hands, from which we have no information, because of some similarities between Baysunghur's Shahnameh, Cairo, and freer manuscripts, which might have risen from a common ancestor. But based on our current knowledge, it seems they didn't have access to those manuscripts produced in northwestern Iran, and that could contribute to other parts of today's discussions, in fact, about Jaloyi manuscripts in Baysunghur's library. And thus, I think we can call the Baysunghur's Shahnameh the first real edition based on numerous patterns in one place. Of course, the second difference between Baysunghur's Shahnameh and other tashihs or editions prior to them is that they had a draft and didn't correct the text while reading it. We have some evidence for that. Muhammad ibn Mutahhar and Jafar's transcriptions were more than 98% identical. Of course, those differences came to Jafar's less precision or less loyalty to his exemplar. Most of them are Jafar's faults. But 98% is ideal, at least with medieval standards. Variants are usually limited to small misspellings, and in one case, in Wasf Kharad, or description of wisdom, 8 couplets have come in a bizarre order in Golestan Palace Baysunghuri Shahnameh, Jafar's transcription, which, if you compare those with Khalid Mutlaq's edition, Muhammad ibn Mutahhar's work looks quite similar. Of course, it had 1 extra couplet and then 2 differences in orders, but the pattern looks quite similar. And those different orders come in adjacent couplets. But in Jafar's transcription, they are not the same. If Jafar did simply miss the line or wrote something in the wrong order, it might not be that different in his work. It shows that he probably relied on his memory, because the first couplets he wrote were the most famous couplets, quoted also in other books like Taj al-Ma'asir or Faraid al-Suluk. And then he had looked at the draft and tried to rebuild the logical connection between other remained couplets. But what about the criteria? How they edited or corrected the text? It was not completely chimerical, in fact. They tried to use some specific criteria. First, they tried to change the Arabic words into Persian ones. They tried to remove Arabic words as much as they could. Here's an example. They changed the bait or couplet Elahi afu kun gunah vara biafzai dar hash jah vara. Afu is the same, a dialectical form of af, which means forgiveness. And they changed that to biamur ziyarab, and changed the hash as beferdos bokshay rah vara. They chose that variance from other exemplars. And second, they changed complicated pronunciations into more contemporary ones, as in the case of خرد بهتر از هرچه ایزد داد, which, Ferdowsi pronounced it as خرد بهتر از هرچه ایزد داد, and it was easy for him. But in Timurid periods, saying ایزد could be tricky, and they changed it to Yazdant, which was quite easier for them. And finally, they tried to include all couplets from other manuscripts in their work, which led to Baysunghur's Shahnameh being quite infamous between textual researchers of the Shahnameh. But, it was not unique to Baysunghur's work. That was not a specific phenomenon. If you see Freer manuscript, it has almost 12.5% more couplets than the London manuscript, and 14% more than Cairo 3041 manuscripts, which could be around 56,000 couplets. And based on, according to Sims, Qavam manuscript has approximately 58,000 couplets. And of course, Topkapı Sarayı 1330 manuscript has more than 56,000 couplets. So that was a trend in those areas to reach that mythical 60,000 couplets in each Shahnameh. So they are not the sole guilty persons for that inclination, in fact. But did they edit the other books too? And did they edit them in the same way as the Shahnameh? Of course, they did edit the other books, but the second answer is no. We have, for example, a Golestan in Chester BT library. We see a quite different approach in it. They did not try to make an aggregation of all added variants and sentences. In contrary, they summarized the book. One of Saadi's famous sentences has been deleted here, as you can see. The original form is در هر نفسی دو نعمت موجود است و در هر نعمتی شکری واجد, which one of the readers has added it in the side of the manuscript, one of further owners, later owners, but they omitted it and made the sentence shorter. And in the crosshatched area, in fact, they omitted a verse of Quran, which is quite daring. اعملوا آل داود شكرا وقلیل من عبادی الشکور, and they just dropped it. So the criteria show obvious similarities. Arabic words and even Quranic verses and hadiths have been omitted, and they consider an archaic stylistic or an affinition to a stylistic archaism, which can be seen here. The archaic phenomenon of adding the coordinating conjunctions wa or u, which means and, or pas, which means then, between the sentences, which is attributed to the dawn of written modern Persia, and it's considered as something seen in Samanid and early Ghaznavid prose. But can we prove that those considerations come from the prince himself and are not merely the scribes' obsessions or failures? It seems we can. At least we have one witness. Ja'far Tabrizi, before being Ja'far Baysunghuri, wrote the Hafez's Diwan in 822. The manuscript is in Topkapı Sarayı Library with the number R947. And if you see that manuscript, you see, for example, in the first 10 ghazals of that diwan, only 5 unique variants can be found in Ja'far's transcription, compared with all manuscripts in the century, in the 15th century, from which only one, and the last one, contains more than one word. So he didn't do that major changes in his own transcription. Of course, he had some failures, some inaccuracies, but the modifications came from Baysunghur himself, and were not made after Ja'far's taste. And he began to modify manuscripts only after becoming the chief in Prince's library. So if we try to conclude, we have different approaches in Baysunghur's library towards different texts, but between those different approaches, we can find similar criteria. And the texts basically were not meant to be closer to their original forms, but more compatible with the patron's test. And the appropriate forms of texts was determined by the Prince Baysunghur himself. Further discussion remains, of course. More research is needed to see other manuscripts and examine closely other possible or probable approaches. And we have 2 confounding factors, which means first, other scribes' works should be investigated carefully, and we should look closely to those contemporary texts like Diwan Imad Faqih or Khaju to see if, or even Kamal Khojandi, to see if they treated those texts which had similar languages to their taste with the same manner. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Ali. You went to town with the text of the Shahnameh, and it's really great to see that the text of these manuscripts are also being studied apart from the arts that has been always.
In fact, if I'm permitted to say that, it's quite enjoyable for me to see different approaches or even different disciplines come to the same conclusion. And of course, we had some discussion on that. Me and you, reached the same conclusions. And of course, I'm happy to confirm some of Bernard O'Kane's conclusions in my works too.
In the textual studies, yes, thank you. It was great panel. Thank you so much, all of you.